Hello and welcome to my booktube channel, Jack and the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. And in this video, I want to talk to you about all 31 of the books that I read in January. That's right, 31 books in 31 days. Absolutely insane. I don't know how I did it. I didn't start out the month intending to do this. At one point, I just noticed that I was on pace for a book a day, and so I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could do it. And the answer is that I could. I really varied my reading across several different genres. It was a pretty well-balanced month. There were some leaders with different genres, some ones that I read more from than others, but generally I was able to mix things up to keep me engaged in my reading. I also had about 2 to 3 books going at a time, especially those longer books. I kind of chipped away over time, and that's how I was able to keep pace with this. I'd say around January 26th, I started getting burnt out. I had a rough day at work, and then for the whole weekend after that, I just wanted to binge watch reality TV. And so that was the only time I really had to force myself to keep reading. And work kind of picked up and is taking up a lot more brain space since then. So definitely will not continue this pace going forward. Now let's get to the ranking portion. If you haven't seen my monthly wrap-up videos, what I do is I talk about the books that I read in order from my least favorite to my most favorite. I break these into different categories of disliked, liked, and loved, and I have chapters down below if you want to hop around at all. I am going to be pretty brief because I can't give you a full review on 31 books. This video would be way too long, but I will link related vlogs and book reviews down below for you so you can check those out. Moving on to the disliked category. The book that I enjoyed reading the least in the month of January is Snowed In with a Demon, The Demon Romance by L.E. Eldridge. This is a book that I checked out on Kindle Unlimited, and I kind of knew what I was getting into with this one, but I thought it would be perfect winter vibes because, as you can probably tell by the title, it is about an inn that faces a snowstorm and people can't leave. And the girl that works at the inn confronts a demon that lives there. As he presents himself as a guest, and spicy things ensue. I did not enjoy this one because I didn't like the chemistry between these two, and also it was just so weird, like how cool she was with his demon form. Like when he transformed from human to demon, she was like, okay, so that's how it works. Let's get it on. And it was just strange, and there wasn't a lot of conflict or much of a plot that kept me engaged, so that is why it is my least favorite read of the month. A read that I enjoyed slightly more than that was Death in Her Hands, a literary fiction by Otessa Mostfay. I picked this book up because when I was asking everybody for recommendations about more mature female characters, this is one that was recommended because we are following a 72-year-old woman, and she is out walking her dog in the woods. She finds a note that says, so-and-so died, this is her body, I didn't kill her though, something like that, something mysterious. And so I was really intrigued by that premise. Interestingly enough, this author also wrote one of the 2 only books that I say I hate and I think is the worst books I've ever read. It's My Year of Rest and Relaxation. So I wanted to give this author another shot. And I tried not to let it influence me that this was the lowest rated book on my GoodReads TBR, but I really think that's because this is categorized as like a mystery thriller, and there was really no suspense. It is a very stream of conscious writing style, which I actually liked. I get why people would be misled by how this was categorized, but you know, this woman finds this note and she kind of gets carried away. This book is about the stories we tell ourselves. She gets carried away with who wrote the note, who this girl was that is the victim. And then she's walking home and then she's talking for paragraphs about bagels. And you're like, what, lady, what? So I was enjoying this book, actually, surprise, surprise, until we got towards the end. And I was so excited to read about a 72-year-old woman and this mystery she found herself in, but I do not like what the author did with this character, the direction they took this character, the stereotype that it kind of played into, and I was angry, very, very angry. So did not like the book, will not be reading more from this author. The next book I want to talk about is Monstrilio, a literary grief horror by Gerardo Samano Cordova. This would be a great book for fans of Frankenstein or Pet Sematary. It deals with the grief of losing a child, and the mother takes a piece of her son's lung and attempts to regrow it. That's where I get that Frankenstein kind of comparison. Attempts to regrow it, and then this creature who is not quite the same as her son, but how she deals with it. And the story is really about how her and then everybody else in the family deals with this grief, and then how they treat this being called Monstrilio, especially as he descends into darkness. I picked this up because I like grief horror, but I did not enjoy this book. I think the plot got really weird for me. The writing was beautiful. The writing was stunning, and there was a lot that I liked to quote for describing grief and moving on and that kind of stuff, but the plot was just so weird for me. Didn't enjoy the direction that it went in, and that's why it's in the disliked category. A book that I enjoyed a little bit more than that was Mayfly, a literary horror by C.J. Lead. Mayfly would be fantastic for readers who really like an in-depth character study, especially if it's a dark and disturbed character, and also very unsettling plot. The problem I had with Mayfly is that this is marketed as a feminist slasher, so I was expecting something to really pack a punch there. I was thinking of something like the Mind F series by S.T. Abbey. That's about a female serial killer, and so I was really interested in that, but it was so slow moving. It's only like 278 pages, and for 200 pages we're just in this girl's head. It very much read like a Not Like Other Girls, because she's just telling us like how dark and disturbed and quirky she is, but like she's not really doing anything. So I was actually really bored and disappointed with this book. After the 200-page mark, when the slasher stuff started picking up, that was creative and interesting and violent and gory. So trigger warnings for that kind of stuff, but it just didn't deliver with my expectations. Although there was stunning writing, lots of things that I wanted to underline, very feminist forward quotes. So that's another pro for this book. The next book on the ranking is A Movable Feast, a memoir by Ernest Hemingway. I was really excited about this one because memoirs are kind of touch and go for me, how much I enjoy them. I don't necessarily care about people's childhoods. I want to read about the point in time they're famous for or known for. And so the background kind of bores me sometimes. What appealed to me about this is that this is Ernest Hemingway talking about his time in Paris. I really wanted to feel transported, like I was in Paris with him in this time period. I thought it would be like so classic and like romantic almost, and it wasn't. It kind of was very self-indulgent, like him just talking about himself and the people he met, which I guess is kind of interesting if you know about these other famous writers that he's talking about. His interactions with F. Scott Fitzgerald and Gertrude Stein, it really bored me to tears. A book a little bit better than that was The Survivors, a thriller by Jane Harper. The Survivors would be a great story for those that like mysteries, particularly when it has to do with small town secrets. Like everybody has something to hide. Something tragic happened in the past, and our main character is returning home to the site of this tragedy. And so like old memories are, surfacing, and then there's a new tragedy, which brings everything up again. And so that's kind of what this is about. Very slow moving. I would say it's less of a thriller like it was marketed to me as, and more of a mystery, but like a very quiet, calm mystery. I had a tough time with it because I was bored. I was looking for something more thrilling, and it was just so calm and slow moving. But I would say it's very atmospheric. This takes place in Australia, and it takes place in the coast, and this water is very cold, and the tides come in and it gets very dangerous, especially if you're in these caves and the tides start coming in. I'll leave it with that. This next book in the dislike category breaks my heart because I wanted so much to love it. Midnight Ruin, a spicy romance by Katie Robert. This was my first 2024 read. It came out in January. It's book 6 in the Dark Olympus series, which I adore, but I can agree that there's ups and downs within the series, and this one is just a down for me. I love spicy romance, but I need chemistry between our characters and I need an interesting, engaging plot. And I did not feel like this had it. I feel like we're just thrown into the mix with these characters and they already have this tension. We're just told they have tension and I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it. And then the intricacies of the relationship was pretty much a copy paste from one, if not two of the other books in the series. So it felt very repetitive. And I was really interested in this macro plot we have going on with some of the politics in this world. And there was like no movement in that plot, at like very, very minimal movement in that. And so I was bored. Again, I was bored. How can you be bored when there's this much spice? That's just a crime. The next book in the ranking is We Were Never Here, a thriller by Andrea Bartz. I picked up this book because I knew it was about two girlfriends backpacking together, and I thought that was so interesting. I love travel. I have often traveled internationally solo, so I love this concept and thought like I could kind of escape in their travels, even though I'm not sure if I wanted to escape in their travels because they are assaulted and they unalive the person, and they're trying to like figure out how to get away with it without going to international prison. So that was the thrilling aspect of the plot. Well, I don't know how thrilling I would say this is. I guess that's a lot of like the crime is up front and then the tension and the anticipation is just like if they can get away with it. I hated the narrator, the main character, so much. She was so dumb. She was so aggravating. I couldn't stand her. I also think this is another case where it wasn't that thrilling vibe that I wanted, like a fast-paced thriller with lots of twists and turns. But I would say this would be better if you're looking for an interesting story about female friendships, maybe some darker friendships. I think that is a better way to market this book to find its target audience. The next book on the list has really altered its spot in the rankings. I can't quite decide how I feel about this book. Pen Pal, a horror novel by Dathan Auerbach. I'm pretty sure I just butchered that name. My apologies. This was a very interesting book because it is from the point of view of a young boy. I think he starts off at like 5 years old. And this almost reads as like a couple short stories, but they're all interconnected. So it was a little bit disorienting at times because sometimes we follow him like as he's getting ready for his first day of kindergarten. And then we're like already when he's going to first grade, but then we go back to like Christmas vacation of kindergarten. Like it hops just a little bit, but still the plot was very cohesive. And I was thoroughly creeped out. There was one spot in the book, it was about page 102, I think I remember it, where I had to put the book down because I was so creeped out. So the book did its job there. However, I did not find the ending satisfying. I was kind of let down. And that's a me problem. I think I'm just very particular in what I want to see. Like the level of unsettlement that I feel has to be balanced by satisfaction at the end. And I just felt frustrated. But if you like unsettling, if you're okay with that, this is great. Very unsettling, very creepy. The next book on the list is the one that I disliked the least. So this is the last one in the disliked category. It is Cujo, a horror novel by Stephen King. We all know the basics of Cujo. A rabid dog starts killing people. That's pretty much all I know about it. I haven't seen the movie, haven't read the book, but I decided to buddy read it with two friends. One of them was the Bald Booktuber, who has a booktube channel here. Great videos, great book reviews. And that was a good experience reading with them. But I did not necessarily enjoy the book. It was not nearly as suspenseful as I was expecting it to be. It was very focused on the characters and their backstory. Like in one case talking about their jobs and like this project at work that the person's stressing over. I do not care. Okay, that has nothing to do with Cujo. So I was disappointed in that. It read much more like a fiction that I didn't care about. I hated the perspective of the 4-year-old. Did not like reading from his point of view. Too young, I think, for that. And I did like reading from Cujo's point of view. It was very, very short, like just a couple lines. And it made me so sad because he was such a good boy. And then he started getting sick and he was in pain, and then how this illness took over him and gave him this thirst for blood. I would have liked that expanded upon a lot more because that could have been really cool. And I also just didn't care about the ending. Just kind of feel deflated about the whole book overall. That felt like a lot of books in the dislike category. Trust me, I was pretty frustrated with it this month, but it all balances out because 31 books in 31 days, there is a lot. So now let's do the liked category. So the book at the lowest ranking in this list is Peril at End House, a mystery by Agatha Christie. This is book 7 in the Hercule Poirot series, according to the reading order listed on the back of these editions. And I really enjoy Hercule Poirot. I don't think any of his books will ever be in the disliked category. This one, Hercule Poirot is on vacation, and there's this young lady, a damsel in distress, who is describing all these near-death experiences she's been having lately that seem really suspicious. So he decides to investigate to help her out. It was okay. It was interesting. I like Hercule Poirot, so like I said, I'm not going to dislike it, but I wasn't necessarily engaged in this one, so that's why it is the lowest of the liked category. The next book that I liked reading in January was Dark Archives, a librarian's investigation into the science and history of books bound in human skin, a nonfiction by Megan Rosenblum. That's a really dark and disturbing title, isn't it? But it catches your attention. That's what happened to me when I watched the Best of 2023 BookTube video by Jessie the Reader. I will link it down below. But the way this book was described immediately captivated me, and I went to Libby and checked out the audiobook. I had to read it for myself. This book explored topics of who did they use to bind these books? What kind of books did they bind? Who were the ones doing the binding? How common were these? How common are these books today? I most enjoyed exploring the ethics of this because we're really looking at consent. Really, did these people consent to this? And if it's kind of fuzzy, or if the answer is no, what should we do with these books today? Should we be studying them for science, or should we respectfully bury them? I definitely recommend this nonfiction book for readers who enjoy books about books. Not books about stories, but the actual books, for obvious reasons. Also for those interested in true crime and the whole cultural obsession with death as entertainment. Also for readers that like the discussion on ethics like I did, and those who like history of medicine. Unfortunately, it was that focus on the history of medicine that made me kind of check out from the book. There was a lot of emphasis on that. I mean, it's in the title, so I can only blame myself, but I didn't like reading all of that history, but there were some very interesting tidbits in this book. The next book that I liked in January was Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, a mystery by Benjamin Stevenson. This mystery would be fantastic for fans of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, because this is also an isolated closed circle mystery where the family is doing like a family reunion at this lodge. And there's a snowstorm and they can't leave. But then a body appears. Who did it? And I liked that. I expected this to be a lot more campy and sarcastic because of the title. And each chapter highlights a different member of the family and who they have unalived and how. So I was expecting it to be kind of like satire or funny, and it was not. It actually had a lot of depth to it. But not in the writing style. The writing style was very self-aware. He breaks the fourth wall and speaks to you, the reader. He talks about the main character, the narrator, is an author of mystery novels. And so at the very beginning, he writes the laws of mystery novels. And so very self-aware book. So very interesting. Love the writing style. I actually would have liked it if it was a little bit more campy, but I was pleasantly surprised with the direction that it took. The actual resolution to the crime is what knocked this down from the loved category for me, because I thought it was so far-fetched and stupid. Not a fan of that. But I liked kind of like the mystery of how everyone in his family has killed someone. That was cool. The next book that I liked in January was Blood Sugar, a thriller by Sasha Rothschild. This is another thriller that I would say is best for fans of literary fiction or character-driven stories because there were not a lot of twists and turns. It was not a very fast-paced book. So what the plot is pretty much summed up right here at the top. She's accused of 4 murders. She's only guilty of 3. So you can imagine this story is about false accusations, which is not something I'm thrilled with in books. Not a trope that I like, but that's like the thriller aspect of it. More like a reverse mystery, right? Like who done it, but like trying to prove she didn't do it. I found this reflective rather than suspenseful, and I'm also really curious how the representation is in this book because we do heavily focus on diabetes, and it's not a disease that I know too much about, so I don't know if it's depicted accurately or not, but I feel like I could have learned a lot about it through reading this book. The next book that I liked in January was Open Throat, a literary fiction by Henry Hoke. I learned about Open Throat from the Best of 2023 video done by the BookTube channel Book Break. And this is about very interesting observations from a mountain lion that lives in the Hollywood Hills. And he's just observing humankind, and his perspective is so endearing and charming and cute. I really, really enjoyed that. Lots of commentary in this one. It got kind of weird for me. There's a scene with Disneyland that really tripped me out. Like, is this like a magical realism? Is this a symbolism for something? I don't know, but the mountain lion goes to Disneyland and it just got weird from there. So that's what knocked it down from love to like, because I just don't know if I understood it, but it was a very interesting read. The next book in the ranking is The Woman in Me, the memoir by Britney Spears. I'm really glad that I listened to this audiobook. Michelle Williams was a great narrator for it, and it was interesting getting more perspective on things that I've known a lot about. I was very disappointed that I was heavily spoiled for this book, and the whole point is for Britney Spears to tell her story in her voice, and I heard about it from social media, right? Like, everything you need to know was already posted and a big deal in the tabloids. So that was kind of disappointing. You can definitely tell that she wrote this book. It is not well written, but I don't know if anybody really expects it to be. It also did not go in depth at all. I would have really liked to investigate some of these darker feelings and get more in depth with what was going on, but it was very, very surface level. So it was good. You know, I'm someone that doesn't necessarily care about celebrities. I don't care who they're dating, where they're going to eat, what they're wearing. I like them for like their art, and I don't care about that other stuff. So I never get that wrapped up in all the other things, like Taylor Swift stuff, like who she's dating. I don't care. I don't care. Like if I like the song, I like the song, and that's as far as I go with it. So I don't get that heavy into pop culture. But this was interesting as like a society, how gullible we are, how we can be manipulated for sure. Definitely a lot of perspective from this book. Next in the rankings are the 2 books in the Roots of Chaos duology, A Day of Fallen Night and The Priory of the Orange Tree, fantasy novels by Samantha Shannon. These are standalones, so I could rank them separately and talk about them separately, but I feel kind of the same about them. And I also feel that if you read one and you like it, you'll like the other. But vice versa. If you read one and disliked it, you'll probably dislike the other. I have a dedicated reading vlog for Priory of the Orange Tree, which I read first, and then I read the prequel. I'd say that this one dives into the characters a little bit more, whereas this one is a little bit more heavy on the world building and like the history. Definitely check out the reading vlog for Priory of the Orange Tree, which I will link down below for you. Next up is The Mystery of the Blue Train, a mystery by Agatha Christie. Again, these Hercule Poirot books were kind of easy to knock out when I needed some quicker reads this month, and they're also very engaging. I liked this one, but I was kind of thrown off because there are several chapters at the beginning where Hercule Poirot doesn't even make an appearance. We're getting to know our cast of characters, unless you read the back, which I never did, but I didn't even know who the victim would be, which I always kind of like. I like going into them blind and just learning the characters and what the conflict will be. But it's a mystery. Somebody dies on a train, not to be confused with Murder on the Orient Express. different kind of story. But there's a death and there's also a theft of some jewels. I liked it. I liked the twist of whodunit. Again, Hercule Poirot is just this arrogant, conceited, lovable, brilliant guy, and I love the mysteries. The next reads in my liked category are books 4 and 5 from the Chestnut Springs series, Reckless and Hopeless, which are contemporary romances written by Elsie Silver. Okay, so overall, I still love the Chestnut Springs series. Adore it. And the reasons I adore it held true in these two final books, book 4 and book 5. And that are the chemistry between the characters, the banter, not only between the love interests, but with the family. The family I love, and the found family, this community that they build on the Chestnut Springs Ranch in this like small town. I think the ranch is like the Wishing Well Ranch or something. I love the setting of the ranch and like the ranch life. That stuff all holds true. However, surprise pregnancy trope in this one had the stereotypical thing I hate, where the female, like, it says, well, I'm gonna do this and you can be involved if you want to or not, but then feels like she's a burden, like I'm trapping him into being a father. And that frustrates me because it takes two people to create a baby. And when the man is stepping up and proving that he wants to be involved, he wants to be a father, he wants to be a supportive partner to the mother, and she's like, no, he can't possibly mean it. Hate that. But that being said, I still liked the book. I still read it in one day on my Kindle because I was hooked on it. But I mean, it did have that kind of stuff that I hate. This one was a fake dating or like fake marriage situation that was okay. I would have liked more family interactions in this one. I was kind of hoping for the plot to take a different turn, and I wanted like the overall family to be more involved and get more appearances and cameos from them, and it didn't go the direction I wanted. So since I had this epic ending in my head, a conclusion to the series, and it didn't live up to that, like it was in the liked category. These were both in the liked category, although the series as a whole, I think I love it. The book that I liked the most in January was Nestlings, a horror novel by Nat Cassidy. Nestlings definitely has very creepy vibes, but also fantastic social commentary, which is my favorite combination for horror. This is about a young couple who wins a lottery for affordable housing in New York City. They get to rent this high-rise apartment, and our main character is very grateful for it, but she's also very nervous because she is in a wheelchair and she's very apprehensive of like how to get out in case of emergency. So this book has great commentary on not only like ableism and disabilities, also anti-Semitism, and also postpartum depression because they are new parents and she's in a wheelchair due to complications from birth, which introduces like a whole slew of emotions to this. And this is great if you've read the book by Riley Sager, Lock Every Door. Like that's another very great creepy apartment building atmosphere, and you just know something's off about this. But the gross direction it goes in was not one that I necessarily predicted. Really enjoyed this. It was a page turner, and again, great for the mix of horror and social commentary. Now let's talk about the books that I loved in January, starting with the one that I loved the least, The Lost Apothecary, a historical fiction written by Sarah Penner. I did have the wrong expectations going into this book. I thought it would be more of a thriller. I heard that this was about an apothecary back in whatever year that would give women poisons to kill their husbands. And like, I love that vengeance aspect. It's something I love reading about. And then I heard there was like a dual timeline that was the past, and then there's like a present day. So I was expecting like delicious revenge, and that was kind of there, but it was more of like social justice. It was softer. More mystery, I think, than thriller, but there were still some exciting parts. Ultimately, I do love the direction that this went. I love the characters. I was invested in both timelines. I really loved this book. The next book I loved was The Road, a post-apocalyptic horror by Cormac McCarthy. In The Road, we follow a father and son duo. Something massive has happened. There's like ash covering everything. You can't see the sky anymore. There's no more animals. They're two of like the last remaining people on Earth, it seems. Although there are some like roaming gangs of bad people, because in this situation, this apocalypse has been going on for so long that people have resorted to cannibalism because there's no other food. There's no animals. So very tense, dark world. I loved the kind of the balance between hope and despair. I think the young boy was very hopeful, and I think the father represented despair, so that balance was very intriguing. I absolutely adored the determination for survival and the desire to still be a good guy when there's so much evil going on in this world, in this post-apocalyptic world. So fascinating that I love this, because this is so dark. Like, by description, this is not a Jack book, but I really, really loved it. The next book I loved was The Big Four, a Mystery by Agatha Christie. That's right, we have another Hercule Poirot. Again, they were short, easy to get through, fast-paced, love the characters. This one was an interesting spin because there are some deaths that Poirot is investigating, but we know who did it. It is this society called the Big Four, and it's really about how Poirot is going to take them down, because they are very, very powerful and influential and intelligent. They seem to keep like beating him to the punch, and so it's great to see how he unravels them. And this has his like sidekick Hastings in the way he just manipulates his dumb friend. It's kind of sad, but endearing at the same time. I really, really liked the twists and turns of this. Again, page turner. I listened to this audio like while reading it physically, one sitting. Super fast and easy. Next on the list, The Drowning Empire, a fantasy trilogy by Andrea Stewart. For this trilogy, I have an entire reading vlog dedicated to this. It is all spoiler free, so if you want to hear more about the plot of this, the characters, the magic system, which is pretty eerie because it has bone shard magic. The book kicks off with book 1, The Bone Shard Daughter, if that sounds familiar to you, and what I thought about all of them. Again, spoiler free, so if you haven't read it yet, please check that out. I thought it was a really cool vlog. I enjoyed it. And this would be great for readers that are looking for intricate, interesting magic system and characters with like a good moral compass that want to do the right thing, some political intrigue, and animal companions. The next book I loved was Ripe, a literary fiction by Sarah Rose Redder. I learned about this book from the Best of 2023 video that Alyssa, aka Nerdy Nurse Reads, did. And it really captivated me by her description. This is a very, very dark, dreary, hopeless kind of a story about capitalism, corporate America, and what it's like to work in this machine where you're just made to feel like you need to just be grateful to have a job. And the burnout and overwork that comes with it, the expectations, so much of this book was relatable, except for the heavy drug usage. It's not something I relate to, but this was like a very extreme version of something that I can relate to. So like a very exaggerated situation. But if you work in like a corporate job, I definitely recommend this book. Just this like hopeless despair of like not having control and having to be two people. Having your internal thoughts of what you know is ridiculous or wrong, but then you have to portray this believer attitude and you say things to like be on board and be a team player even though you may not buy into it. Again, this is an extreme literary example of that situation, but still very interesting. The ending kind of threw me. Like I was going back and forth between a 4 and 5-star rating after reading the ending. But honestly, I think I have to bump this to a 5-star. There are 2 books remaining in this list. The next one that I loved was Spinning Silver, a fairy tale fantasy written by Naomi Novik. I wanted to read Spinning Silver in January because I heard it had great winter vibes, and it definitely delivered. I also heard it was like a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, which I don't think I'm really familiar with that fairy tale because I didn't necessarily see that correlation, but I did absolutely love the fairy tale-esque vibes in this and the plot. I loved our female main characters that were intelligent and strategic and smart and political, and oh my gosh, I love that. One call out for this, it does the thing that I hate in writing styles where it switches POVs so frequently and you don't necessarily know whose head you're in. And there's also a young kid, like a 5-year-old, who I hated his perspective, and his POV should have been eliminated. It added nothing. It was frustrating. So that is one con for this book, but my enjoyment definitely overshadowed all of that, and I really loved Spinning Silver. My favorite read from January was Madame Bovary, a classic by Gustave Flaubert. I have a dedicated reading vlog for this book that includes my annotation strategy for it as well. Essentially, this is about a woman in 1857 who marries a doctor, but she is unsatisfied with life. This is a book about female discontent. She is restless with everything. Everything she tries, just the novelty wears off super fast. So she gets into overspending and eventually adultery. And she is finding that none of these things really satisfy her. This is fantastic if you like reading about unlikable characters that make bad decision after bad decision, like complete train wreck of a character and plot, and just their destruction and how it impacts everybody around them. I'm surprised I like this as much as I did. Please check out that reading vlog. It has all the details. This is a book I could really gush about, but I'm gonna try to keep this video short. Haha, funny, short, right? But I need to shut up now and end this video because it's already super long. 31 books in 31 days. I can't believe I did it, but I think I'm gonna take a few days off now. I need some reality TV in my life. I need to recover, but I don't feel burnt out on reading. I feel very energized. Even though I had a lot of books in the disliked category, I really enjoyed the escapism this month. So, great reading month. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this January monthly reading wrap-up video. Happy reading. I'll see you next time.